In the late 1970s, a man named David lived in a small, isolated town in the United States. David was a long-haul truck driver, used to spending long, lonely hours on the road, often driving through the night to meet his delivery deadlines. He was a no-nonsense, down-to-earth man who didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. But one cold winter night, something happened that changed his mind forever. It was a typical late-night drive. David had picked up a load from a warehouse in the middle of nowhere and was heading toward a distant city. The highway was empty, and the night was pitch black, with only the dim headlights of his truck cutting through the darkness. Snowflakes began to fall, lightly at first, then heavier as the night wore on. The road became slick, and David had to slow down to keep control of his truck. Around midnight, he noticed something unusual. In the rearview mirror, he thought he saw movement in the sleeper cab behind him. It was just a shadow, barely there, but it caught his attention. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just the play of light and darkness, a trick of his tired mind. But the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it got stronger. He felt as if someone was watching him, an unsettling sensation that grew with each passing mile. David kept glancing at the mirror, expecting to see someone back there, but the sleeper cab was empty. Trying to shake off the unease, David turned on the radio, hoping to distract himself. But the moment he did, the radio started to emit strange static, and a soft, almost imperceptible voice whispered through the speakers. It was too faint to make out any words, but it was undeniably there. David's heart began to race, and he quickly turned the radio off, preferring the silence over whatever was trying to come through. As he continued driving, the sense of being watched became overwhelming. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Summoning his courage, he pulled the truck over to the side of the road. The wind howled outside, rattling the truck as he cautiously turned around to inspect the sleeper cab. It was empty, just as he had expected. But the feeling of dread didn't leave him. It was as if the very air in the truck had become charged with something malevolent. Just as David was about to turn back to the wheel, the temperature inside the cab plummeted. His breath came out in visible puffs, and a sharp, icy chill ran down his spine. Then, in the reflection of the windshield, he saw that a shadowy figure sitting in the passenger seat next to him. David's blood ran cold. The figure was indistinct, more of a silhouette than a person, but its presence was unmistakable. It sat there, motionless, staring straight ahead as if it had been there all along. Terrified, David didn't dare move. He watched the figure out of the corner of his eye, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Minutes passed like hours, and the figure remained silent, its form flickering in and out of focus. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure began to fade. It dissolved into the air, leaving David alone in the truck once more. The temperature slowly returned to normal, and the oppressive feeling lifted. Shaken, David started the truck and drove off, desperate to put as much distance between himself and whatever he had just encountered. He didn't stop driving until he reached the city, and even then, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Years later, David retired from truck driving, but he never forgot that night. He never spoke of it to anyone, fearing that people would think he was crazy. But deep down, he knew what he had seen. And whenever he heard stories of other truckers encountering strange things on the road, he would silently nod, understanding all too well that some passengers on the road are not of this world.